doing?
Peeling a root.
Why?
Might make something out of it.
What you make?
Maybe a ring box.
Ah, fancy.
Maybe. All right, I've been saving this little chunk of maple root for a while for the right project. It grew out of a stump above ground and twisted back on itself and grew together. I mean, how is that not going to have cool grain inside? Probably need to give these a minute to dry out before we can do much more. Cool grain though. All right, some time has passed and these are all showing under 10% at the surface. I'm sure it'll be a little higher once I get inside. Definitely changed shape a little bit. They are no longer all the same size, which is fine. Mostly that was just waiting. I gave them a couple of rounds in the toaster oven too to speed things up a little bit. That seemed to work fine. I've never tried it before. I've never really been working with such small pieces before that it was an option. But yeah, I think it's time to finally proceed. I only need one, and I have 3 blocks here. I think I'm gonna risk it and start with my favorite, which is this one. See if I can get through this without making any mistakes. Alright, I thought this bark seam was a surface thing that was going to clean up when I took this down half an inch. And it was only present here, and there was just a dark spot here. And as I brought it down, this actually opened up. So this is included through. This is where the 2 sections of root grew together, and there is some included bark that runs through this piece. I thought it was just a dip in. I think it looks cool, but it's weak. I guess I haven't talked about what this is actually going to be at all, and now it matters. This is going to be a ring box. Some very good friends of mine are getting married, and they want to keep their wedding rings in a decorative box and circulate it through the crowd during the ceremony. And as a gift for them, I'm making the box. I think it's a really cool, fun project, and I want to make something unique and special for them. So the plan is that it's going to be a little over 2 inches square and about 4 inches long, so there's room for 2 rings inside, unlike most ring boxes, which are just for 1. And I want it to be single piece with continuous grain, so I'm milling the block, and then I'm going to separate it, about a 3/4 inch lid and a remainder, whatever, 1.5 inch base, and then be some hinges and a couple of magnets as a latch, and we'll pretty it up and put some finish on it. Really, it's an extremely simple project. It's all about making the piece of wood speak for itself, which is a lot of fun as a woodworker. The point of all that is that this seam, once the lid is separated from the base of the box, this seam could be a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and make that cut right now and see what we're working with, and I give it decent odds that I'm going to be switching to one of my other blanks because I think that's going to be too much of a weak spot. Let's give it a try, see how it goes. I think that looks okay proportion-wise. I was originally thinking a much thinner lid, but the screws that hold the hinges in are 3/4 inch long. So I made that 7/8. Got 100 for my saw kerf there, which leaves just shy of 1.5 inches for the bottom. I think that looks pretty good. Actually, that might be okay. Occlusions on the bottom here and the back. Won't compromise either of the hinge locations. Will be exposed when I carve out the interior. That's fine. Should have cut this length first, but I got excited. It's all right. This is such a cool piece of wood. I think the plan is I want to do the interior feature, flatten these faces good, and clear out the pockets, and then get the hinges and the latches installed early. That will hold the two pieces together, and then I'll take the final skim passes off the outside and ease the corners and things. And I'm hoping that by doing it that way, that I will get a perfect matchup on the finished box. So when I separated the two halves, that's a difficult cut on the table saw. There's not a lot of block to hang on to as it's passing through, so you can see some paint transferred from the blade, and there's some, maybe you can't see on camera, but there's some saw marks. And when you hold the pieces together, the seam isn't perfect. There's some, the corner is wide there. So I want to flatten both these faces, and they're a little bit too small for me to be comfortable doing that on the table saw. So what I'm doing is I've got a piece of aluminum tooling plate here. These are extremely flat. And I went ahead and I took any high spots or dings off of it with just a little bit of sandpaper wrapped around a 1-2-3 block, which is extremely flat. And then I'm just putting some regular old 120 grit sandpaper on that surface and using it to flatten these blocks. You have to be careful when doing this, because if you weight one corner, you can sand a bowl into it. I guess it's not a bowl. Sand a curve into it. But if you're careful, you can get this surface good and flat. So that's the plan. Okay, can't feel any saw marks anymore. Just draw a little grid in pencil and sand that off and make sure I've hit every square inch of this thing. Disappearing pretty evenly, that's good. There we go. The pencil lines are gone. Checked with a block, I don't see any weird shapes. Looks like I did a good job. Let's do the other side. Wild grain is tricky. That looks just like a saw mark, but it's not. That is glass smooth. Just part of how it grew. And yeah, real flat. It's like the corners lifted on me a little, but that'll actually disappear when I tidy up the edges. So yeah, well pleased with that. Making small things is fun. That would have taken forever if this was a table. All right, I've been mucking with this setup for a while, and I think I got it dialed in. So this is the router table wing of my table saw, and we're at the absolute limits of how far my camera arm reaches, so this isn't the best angle, but it's what you get. This is the table saw fence, and I've clamped a couple of strips of plywood to it. There's the part, and these are the hinges. These are cool concealed hinges that move in a pretty neat way. And the idea is that I need to route a recess to accept the wings and then a hole to accept the body of the hinge in each half. And then these will be totally concealed and I won't have to relieve the outside corner and the box will still open 180 degrees. So this is 3/8. That's a 3/8 router bit. That's easy. I've done some layout on this and figured how much space I want around the outside of the box. And pause while I adjust lighting. Oh, this is all terrible. So I've figured out how much waste I have on the outside of the box that I still have to clean up, and then where the hinges go with enough clearance on each side and where the well for the rings goes. These are 1 inch long, bit's 3/8, so I need to slide 5/8. So I've got a couple of stacks of cardstock here that are 5/16 each. And the plan is I'll set the bit low. I'll do this in a couple of passes. I set this stop block to match where I want the inside to go. And then I set this stop block to fit my spacer stack. And I'll creep up with this bit and do a couple of passes until I have the depth of the wings. And then once that's done, I'll continue coming up with the depth. And I'll use these spacer packs either side, so there's no more sliding. Now I'm just plunging, and that'll plunge cut the extra depth for the body of the hinge. I tried to do this where I routed the slot and then just drilled a hole on the drill press, and I could not get the tolerances I needed to make this go in. I want this to be a really tight fit with no space around it. I want it to look really slick when it's done. And this is the best way I figured to do that. So, done a couple of test pieces. Time to do the real thing. Wish me luck. Looking pretty good. About 10 thou over there, which is good. This is supposed to be about 195. We're at 210. Happy with that. This is supposed to be 415. We're at 405. So, yeah, that will do. Now I'm going to do the left hinge at the top and the right hinge at the bottom. Then I'm going to adjust my stop blocks and do the opposite ones. So that won't guarantee that they'll be perfectly matched right to left, but it should mean they're pitched really, really well. And since I have some space to clean up on the right and left, that's what I'm really worried about. All right, carry on. No mistakes allowed. We're about 225 deep. We're looking for 240. 241. I feel like that's going to be good. Actually, now that I think about the kinematics of this hinge, I think these are supposed to be 1/4 inch deep. A normal hinge on a box like this, if it was mounted too deep, the lid would touch before it closed all the way and it would stop it from closing. It would hang open a little bit. These hinges actually have a 4-bar integrated into the mechanism. So this hinge is going to separate more or less straight and then start to come open. Can you see that on camera? These come straight apart as they start to rotate. So what that means is that even with a little bit of a gap in there, these are still parallel and the box will still be closed. So I want these a hair sub-flush. They measure just under 240, and I will bet that if they go in a 250 hole, a 250 deep hole, that the box will close tight and look good. So I'm going to go a hair deeper. $246. I'm happy with that. All right, time to set up for the other side. Looking pretty good. All right, that looks pretty sharp. I think the next step is to rig up something similar for carving out the actual interior of the box here. All right, so I've been working on how to mill the interior of the box here, and I've tried a couple of things and made a couple of test pieces. And this is what I've come up with. Just took some thin plywood and made a fence that goes all the way around my router and set it up with the correct offset such that if I put the hinges at the, to me, top, probably to you, bottom, I'm not sure how this camera's going to orient, but regardless, if I put the hinges there and run this around thusly, it carves out the space. Got this one backwards once, that's what this lip is about. That's good. Get your mistakes out of the way on the practice pieces. I think I'm happy with how it's performing and how everything is aligned and all the measurements, so it's time to actually start cutting on the real one. It's looking pretty sharp. Let's see here. This is supposed to be 573. Holy crap, we're at 574. I think I can live with that. 698. 697. That's absurd. And 670 on the walls. And 668. And 662. Yeah, easily within 10 thou, which is absurd for woodworking and plenty good enough for this. And yeah, the proportions look about right. Bearing in mind I'm going to take a little bit off all the way around the outside, so carry on. This is going to be the interesting side, see how much of this inclusion becomes revealed in the bottom of that pocket as I work through it. So far, 0. I think that's the start of the bark inclusion there. So 3/8 deep, I think that's going to be good for the lid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up just a hair and do a nice cleanup pass so that's easier to sand out. That came out nice. So that's 3/4 deep. Bark's definitely peeking through, but I think it looks awesome. And it's certainly not strength deficient. Debating if I want to go any deeper. That is looking really good. I think I'm going to do another 1/16. Yeah, that looks really good. All right, cleanup pass. All right, is it time to install the hinges? I'm actually asking. These are a very tight fit, and I'm not sure I can get them out again. There's not a great way to pull on them. And I'm okay sanding and finishing around them in place because of the way they open. I'll be able to get pretty much everything except right there. And I can get to right there to some extent too. So I think the latch can go in after the outside is dressed. But I want to put the hinges in first and then do my final exterior cleanup as one piece so I get really good matchup between the halves. So yeah, I think these go in now. Hasn't quite closed up. And it also doesn't open, which I knew would happen. I need to skim the back edge here to provide the clearance. But that gap isn't good. Hoping that once the screws are in, that'll pull up. All right. Got good matchup on all the sides. Let's see if the hinge clearance is close yet. Not quite. Let's creep up on it. right. The back is cleaned up and flat, and it opens. Let's get some screws in this now, see if that tightens this up or if I need to figure out a way to extract these hinges so I can mill them a little deeper. Got 80 of these to do, and I want them real centered. There's not a lot of room for forgiveness here with these small screws. So I've got a drill bit that just barely fits in the clearance hole, which is of course too big to pilot drill for the screw. But I'm using it just to locate the part. I'm plunging it into the metal bracket here and making sure it's centered on the hole, and then just barely pecking into the wood to create a divot that'll be centered on that hole. Then, without moving this vise, I'm going to switch this bit out for a 3/32. Little baby drill bit. And then I'm going to drill the hole. The other thing that needs to happen is the depth stop. Set my depth stop to a little over 3/4. I'm going to have to reset that every hole because I'm switching bits. But that's okay. Away we go. So I'm not going to tighten that one all the way until the other one's in. I don't want to risk caulking the hinge in here. All right, one down, 7 to go. All right, now my hope is, as I tighten these screws, it'll suck that hinge in a little bit. Man, those hinges are sharp. By which I mean they look good. I didn't just cut myself. All right, it's pretty repetitive. Drop into time lapse. Yeah, it closed up pretty nice. It's not invisible, but smaller than it was. Yeah, so all I've done there is I made a real simple drill jig that I could line up to the outside dimensions of the box and make sure that the position of these, they're just magnets. I keep saying latches, but they're just simple 1/4 inch magnets. And they don't have to be perfectly aligned, and they don't have to be in any exact position, but you do want them to match side to side so that the magnets line up. Now let's see if that force is enough to keep that seam nice and tight. Not really providing a lot of force relative to the hinges. It's not going to fall open, but it's not pulled tight. Might put a few more in. That feels pretty nice. I was hoping that seam would be a little tighter. But it feels good. Alright, I think it's time to final dimension this thing. Good enough. I don't really have a target for height. We're at 225 now, and the width's 219. Feels a little tall. Wall thickness is still about 410. Alright, that makes it just slightly wider than it is tall. I think I like that look. Alright, that is final size. I think I'm going to do some fillets on the verticals and chamfers on the horizontals. I think that'll look nice. I think those chamfers want to be a little bigger. I was originally thinking those would be bigger than that, but I kind of like it small, a little more understated. Yeah, I think this is machined. Time to sand. All right. Sanded up to 1,000 grit. Wiped it down with a rag dampened with mineral spirits to get all the dust off. Now it's time for the payoff. I bought a little jar of this stuff. I've never used it before, but I've heard good things. Odysseus Cornwall's Odie's Oil. Let's see if that samurai carpenter guy knows what he's about. Stir well, use sparingly. Buff in, buff off. That came out pretty nice. I'll put some rings in there. Now it just needs a pillow. Found some nice black velvet that I think will work well for this. For some reason somebody piped a puffy paint smiley face on it. I think that's a bonus. All right, so I'm just kind of figuring this out as I go, but it's working really well. Very, very simple idea. No sewing, no hemming, no anything. I'm just cutting a strip of fabric double the width of the ring box. So in my case, this is 6 inches because that's 3. And then I fold it in half. Each quarter I fold over. I fold it in half, but with the opening in the center here, like that. And I cut a long strip and I did that and I rolled it up. I rolled it until the diameter of the roll was a little bigger than half the height of the cavity. And then I unrolled that and measured how far it was and doubled it. And for me, that was about 15 inches. So it's a 15 by 6 piece of fabric. And all I'm doing is fold it like this so that there's no ragged edges or anything showing on the back. And then rolling it up from one end to the halfway point and then from the other end to the halfway point. And that puts the ugly end of the fabric on the inside of the rolls where you never see it, and the 2 ragged cut ends on the inside also. You end up with 2 little logs that you can squeeze rings between, and it'll hold them with if there's a setting, with the setting displayed, or if it's a band, just hold it. And then because each one of these is more than half the height of the box, it friction fits inside there, and you have a ring pillow. So anyway, I've never done this before, so I'm just playing with it. I did test fit, and I think I need to roll it a little more tightly. It ended up a little loose feeling. But yeah, I'm just playing with it till I'm happy with it, and it's going great. Sort of optimistic that I've pretty much got it, so let's try this. Don't really have to be careful at all about hitting the halfway point, just eyeball it. Flip it around and do it again. And once they both meet, looks like that one's a little chonkier than that one, so I just Toro roll it over. Am I allowed to say that? Until they're about equal. Probably black on black on black. You probably can't see anything on the camera. Can you see from the end? True it up, let's see how it fits. Yeah, just friction fits down in there. Tuck the ends down so they don't show. Yeah, I think that's going to hold rings really nice. Wish I had a ring on hand to show you. My wedding ring doesn't come off. What do I have? Here. Scissor rings. Eh? Can't close the box, but you get the idea. What else have I got? Here we go. Key ring. Perfect. Key ring goes in there. Looks all pretty on display for everyone to see when you open the box. Beautimus. There's another. beautiful spalted maple root double ring box. I'm very pleased with how that came out. What do you think? You hear me talking and you're wondering what that's about? Just talking to my camera. What do you think, camera? Think they're gonna like it? Doesn't taste like dog treats, so you don't think so? No longer interested. Oh, why are your ears always so itchy? So itchy.